Anyway, welcome. Thank you, Anchal, for that announcement. So, I was thinking that, many years back, electronics was like the in thing. Then people started talking about services, software. But now electronics is back, right? Everybody is talking of electronics. But, the question was that can we compete with China? But now the question is, can we even compete with Taiwan and Korea? So maybe if you could just start with that.
So thank you very much for inviting me here. So let's understand, first of all, what is the process of competitiveness? Then we can answer this question whether we can compete with China or Taiwan or Korea. The process of competitiveness begins with the learning curve, the technology, knowledge, education, that's the learning curve. In our industry, it is more about having this ecosystem of supply chain, working at a scale, and the skills getting created. Every single country which has become the most, globally competitive country, and their output have become very, very competitive, the process has gone through the same manner that you first acquire skills and technology, and because your per capita income is lower when you are acquiring the skill and technology, the moment you acquire skill, your output becomes very, very competitive. And then you start doing trade, etc. So we are going through this process of learning and growth, and it is not about whether we will be competitive. We are 3% in per capita as compared to America, 6% in per capita as compared to Taiwan, Korea and Japan, and just 17% per capita in terms of China. So the moment we acquire skills, we'll be the most competitive in the world. There is no doubt about it.
That's great to hear.
You want me to touch on this? Okay. It's always a pleasure first to listen to my colleague Hariom ji. So much to learn. So there again you go. I want to sort of step back a little bit and say, or kind of reiterate, why is electronics so important? And I think my guess is a lot of us as citizens of India don't understand that enough. So I know several years ago, this is 8-9 years ago, in the previous regime, walking up to a finance secretary, and I went with a small delegation, and last minute he said, it was supposed to be a half an hour slot. Last minute he said, the FM has called me, so sorry, but so I said, no issue, sir, we will come back another day. Give us another slot. He said, no, in 5 minutes I will be able to sort out your issue. So I said, I guess that's not going to happen, but so he didn't even let us sit. There were just 2 other colleagues with me. And he said, let me ask you a question. Are you guys competitive? Are you guys globally competitive? So one of my colleagues in the room said, a learned colleague, said, no sir, we are not, and that's why we come to you, because we believe there are some financial policy measures that need to be taken if we have to become competitive. He said, no, let me stop you there. Look, it is not important that every country has to be competitive at everything. And he threw 2 books at us, Clash of Civilizations and Competing Nations. And he said, we are good at software, let's do software, and we can continue to import the hardware. And I told him, I said, sir, I'm sorry, but I don't think we have the time to get into that discussion. And someday I will come back to you. On a lighter note, I told him, I said, you opened my eyes. I'm going to go back and do a DPR for a chain of dance bars all over the country, because that's definitely very beneficial. We'll make a lot of money and there'll be a lot of entertainment. However, I told him that I don't think you as the finance ministry have enough money to continue to import all the electronic hardware that will be required in this country. It so fortunately happens when the gentleman retired, I won't name him, he's a co-member at the Gymkhana Club with me, and we had a nice talk over a drink, and then he began to understand what I was saying. Electronics, it's a big mistake to think that this is a vertical, that this is an industry vertical. Okay, we don't make plastics, we can import it. We don't do tailoring, somebody else can do our suits and our shirts. No sir, electronics is something which is embedded in every single vertical of this country. You want to make better plastics, you need electronics today. You want to do a tool room, you need a better tool room, it has to be done through electronics. No software will ride without it. And now, somehow prophetically, all that is coming true when we look at geopolitical issues, geo-economic issues, the weaponization of supply chains. And I know that our friends in semiconductors have got all the limelight, but let me tell you, our cell phones, his cell phones, can stop working even if my 25 paise capacitor is not available to him. And my 25 paise capacitor cannot be made if I don't get that little lead wire which might cost me 0.05 per capacitor. And that also is today coming from our neighboring country called China. So I think it's a call that we need to take as a nation. First and foremost, whether this is an area that we can afford to continue to import. Oil we have to import because we don't have it. But electronics, as you rightly mentioned a little while ago, sir, we have known how to make electronics 30 years ago when I joined the business. Every single audio system, 2-in-1s, black and white TVs, VCRs, VCBs, everything was made in this country, and all their components largely were made in this country, including the picture tube. But we missed that bus. We missed that bus because of two reasons. We didn't understand the importance of that industry. And second, of course, then the policy, the focus that we required didn't come. Having said that, okay, that's an old story. We come some way now, and I will stop in a minute. I know we are short of time. I think you said that we are back. I think we are coming back. It's a present continuous kind of tense I'd like to use, because what we have successfully done is bring back assembly to this country. Assembly, in my opinion, is also something that will fly back very quickly. In order to get cell phones, and Hariomji knows much more than I do or will ever know about it, but in order to get cell phone assembly into India, which makes us the second largest assembler in the world, we have actually put a lot of our money where our mouth is. We put a 20% import duty on cell phones. We put a PLI scheme which looks like 6%, but if you do the calculation of return on investment, this is close to 400%, right? And so this is a lot of money that the government, of course, it's a fantastic scheme because it's front-loaded. You have to first perform and then you'll get the money. So it's very outcome-oriented. So it has all the right tick marks. However, it's not enough, in my opinion, to retain. We can retain assembly maybe for some more time, but if we don't do enough about manufacturing, going deep down, and what got us to assembly, in my opinion, will not get us to manufacturing. Components will not get a duty like cell phones got, so there will be no protection. Components, value addition. So we have certain reasons why we don't manufacture enough in this country. Cost of energy, cost of logistics, cost of finance. There are several out of our factory competitive issues which are not in our hands. They are all improving, thank God. That is happening and the government is really focused on it. But having said that, when will we be able to leverage our labor advantage to compensate for some of these non-level playing field remains a matter of time, remains a matter of all of us as focus. And I think it is our duty as citizens to think about this, because most of us in this room will probably retire in 15, 20, 30 years. But the foundation that we are putting today will go way beyond that, and hopefully combined with the skills with IT, we will be a superpower.
So I'd like to continue with your chain of thought, because that's an interesting anecdote, but I'm happy that the attitudes have changed. So I'd like to come to the PLI scheme. One is the government is taking it very seriously, and second, it's not a vertical. The PLI schemes are all across. So I just want to ask, are these PLI schemes enough? And what is lacking? And can we catch the bus again? I'd like to hear from both of you.
Yeah, okay. Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so first of all, PLI scheme actually came in our sector first, and then rest, others are following this. But before I go to the PLI question, Mr. Vinod Sharma has actually pointed out to the right things completely. And I would like to elaborate it further and then come to the PLI. So he said whether we would continue to import electronics. So let me just share a point of view so that we understand where we stand today. As a country, we are 18% of the global population, surviving on a mere 3.1% of the global GDP. And it is not that, the situation is right now here. When the Britishers left us, they left us at 3.9% of the global GDP and 14% of the global population. We have brought it down to 18% of the global population and 3.1% of the global GDP. Which means that whatever we have done till now, in the last 75 years, actually we have progressed backward, albeit at a slower pace. That's what we have done. Why we have done this and how this situation is going to be changed. I think this country, it is not just about electronics. This country has to export everything from a shoe to a chair to a furniture to everything to finally take the fair share from the global GDP. That's the most important one, because if we have to feed 18% people, we need at the very least 18% global GDP, which will take us to about 16, 17 trillion dollars. So what needs to be done for that? That's the most important one. The population and per capita is in our deep favor. Most important thing is that, as I used to think before, I started sort of interacting with the government, because prior to this I've done 3 businesses, and all 3 businesses we were number 1, so I've not sort of applied my mind as to how, why government is so important for business, because I've done small businesses. But in this business I realized that it's a country to country business. Unless the government is invoked, you can't do. When I started meeting the government, I realized that, frankly speaking, government has very little exposure and knowledge. And therefore it finally boils down to the industry. The entire weakness, whatever has happened in the last 75 years, 100% boils down to the industry, because industry has not taken the leadership mantle and not guided the government in the right direction, because they were the most exposed people. Now, as a country, we understand that China is giving so many subsidies and so many incentives. Why China is able to give that is because, for example, let me give an example. If I have 4 people in the family and they can get only, if 100,000 rupees job cost, they are uncompetitive. But at 50,000 they are competitive. So instead of not producing anything, if 50,000 is, incentivized or subsidized, they'll be able to produce. This simple mathematics, those countries who have been able to understand that, they know. And therefore, from whether, he was talking about from logistics to everything, the governments are ready to provide. Now, with our per capita, no matter what China does, China do, we can be more competitive than them, even if we'll give subsidy, etc., in various angles. We have to just understand that and slowly go at a very deeper level from the PLI at the top level, where we need to just, ensure that, we are running this, scale. And then from there, we have to manufacture everything, not only components, but also, get our hands on the software, because electronics is mainly about software. So it's like the process has just started. Industry is there to be blamed. We have to take it further and ensure that we, go deeper and do the entire value addition in the country.
On the PLI front, I would say, it's certainly necessary but not sufficient. It's a very good, in my opinion, an excellent first step, because besides other things, it has actually got the what they call the animal instincts back into the business. People are now committing a certain and large investments in each sector, and that augurs very well, because it tells all of us that we are on a growth path, on an investment path. And for a long time, the industry has actually kept behind. Government became the largest investor in everything, and we were not playing an adequate role, let's say. But having said that, no, it's certainly not enough. First, PLI is a big boys game. It's for the large companies. In every sector, you will find that it's either the large multinationals or some Indian champions which are coming up. Great, absolutely great. But I think it would really be only a half step if we don't bring a PLI for MSMEs. Now, in the case of the large companies, in my opinion, the trigger was investment. All PLIs have a certain investment figure in mind, and then all the incentives are bearing out of that. For MSMEs, in my opinion, that trigger cannot be investment, because that's not their strong point. Their strong point is employment. And I think all of us as entrepreneurs, I always feel one of our key dharmas is to create more jobs in a country like India. And we cannot create enough jobs, as he rightly says, by only selling to ourselves. It's like hiring cooks to make rotis for our own house. Unless you start giving it out to other people and getting something else in exchange for those chapatis, you're not going to go too far. So you can keep feeding your own people, but that's not what makes you rich. So if you want to go there, the PLI for MSMEs, based on number of jobs that get created, regular, formal jobs that pay PF and ESI, not casual jobs. And I think this is a really big mistake we made in a country where 70% of our organized jobs are what we call casuals. And I always ask myself, if I call somebody a casual worker, why am I so offended when he works casually? because you're calling him casual, right? And you say, hey, come on, take my business seriously, look at the purpose of my organization, vision, mission. वो 10,000 रुपए के casual आदमी से आप expect करते हैं कि वो ये सब समझेगा और आपका योगदान देगा, loyalty दिखाएगा, responsibility लेगा. So अगर देश को competitive होना है, so I think there is a lot of it that we need to do ourselves, whether as large companies or as MSMEs. And PLI is not the only answer, because the real PLI, is still a stick. It's still something that we have got because it is mitigating some disabilities that we have in our system. It is time that after 75 years, Amritkal and all that, we better now come to a stage where we say, no, we don't have disabilities. Why should power be a disability? Why should I be paying so much for it? And if it happens because of a silly policy like monopolies on electricity generation, then let's abandon it. Are we going to keep this country where we are just because 20, 30, 50,000 people in the electricity department will come onto the streets? Let them come onto the streets. It's time for some hard talk. And I think that is what will get us. So schemes are okay, but I think they are a gap.
So thank you for those incisive analysis and insights. I'll take it that we may have missed the bus, but better late than never. We are on our way back. So I'll take it for that.
Yeah, it's a bus we can't afford to miss. I think we should remind ourselves of that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sunil sir, for the session. I would like to request you to hand over the mementos to the panelists.
This is the fastest memento I've earned in my life.